Ready for another mind-bending exploration?
Always.
Today, we're diving deep into Alan Watts and his book, The Book, on the taboo of knowing who you are. Intriguing title, right?
Yeah, and Watts really gets you thinking with this one. He basically flips the whole finding yourself thing on its head.
Yeah, like what if the real you is something we're actually conditioned to ignore? Kind of a radical idea.
Definitely. And Watts calls this an unrecognized but mighty taboo, this idea that there's a sort of conspiracy to avoid confronting our true nature.
Like we're all kind of in on this agreement to not look too closely at who we really are.
It's like we're afraid of what we might find.
Yeah, I can see that. So how does Watts approach this taboo? Where does he even begin?
Well, he does this really interesting thing where he draws on both Western science and Eastern philosophies.
Like a blend of different perspectives.
Exactly. He's not afraid to challenge conventional thinking, whether it's from the scientific world or the spiritual realm.
I like that.
Yeah,
So which Eastern philosophies is he drawing on here?
Well, one of the key ones is Vedanta.
Vedanta. For those of us who aren't, like, philosophy experts, can you give us a quick rundown of what that's all about?
Sure. Vedanta is an ancient Indian philosophy that explores the nature of reality and the self.
The self. You mean like who we are?
Yeah, but it goes deeper than that. Vedanta suggests that there's this underlying unity to everything, like a single source of consciousness that manifests itself in all these different forms we see around us.
So it's not just about me and you as separate individuals, but we're all part of this larger interconnected whole.
Exactly. And that's where Watts ties it back to his idea of the taboo. He's saying that we've been conditioned to see ourselves as separate, like isolated individuals, when in reality we're all expressions of this one universal self.
Ooh. Okay, I'm already feeling my mind starting to bend a little.
Yeah, Watts definitely has that effect on you. He makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world.
So where does he go from there? How does he start to unpack this whole idea?
Well, he uses this really simple but brilliant analogy, the image of a tube.
A tube, like a pipe.
Yeah, exactly. And he uses this tube to represent how a lot of us experience life, like we're constantly consuming things, producing things, and then ultimately we kind of wear out. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, totally. It's like that feeling of being stuck on a treadmill, just going through the motions.
Exactly. And Watts is suggesting that this tube mentality, this narrow way of seeing life, is a symptom of something deeper, this illusion of separateness. Like, we feel like we're these isolated individuals moving through a world that's external to us.
So it's like we're trapped inside this tube, unable to see the bigger picture.
That's it. And here's where Watts gets really radical. He says that this feeling of being a separate I inside our bodies, this thing we all take for granted, is actually a hallucination.
Wait, a hallucination? Like seeing things that aren't there? I'm pretty sure I'm grounded in reality.
It's not about seeing things that aren't there, but more about, like, misinterpreting what's actually happening. Think about it. Scientifically, we don't come into this world, we emerge from it. We're literally made of the same stuff as the stars.
So we're not visitors here. We're part of it from the very beginning.
Precisely. Watts uses this amazing image, he says, as the ocean waves, the universe peoples. Like we're expressions of the universe, just like a wave is an expression of the ocean.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it, but it's definitely a lot to take in. So why does this illusion of separateness matter so much? What are the consequences of seeing the world this way?
That's a great question, and Watts goes into a lot of detail about this. One consequence is that it leads to this hostile attitude towards nature. We see ourselves as separate from the natural world, something to conquer and control. But if we are nature, then that whole adversarial relationship just doesn't make sense.
It's like fighting against yourself. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Another thing is that it creates a world where we lack a shared sense of reality. It makes it harder to understand each other, to empathize, to work together.
Makes sense. If we're all operating from this isolated perspective, it's no wonder there's so much conflict and division in the world.
And that brings us to one of Watts' key concepts, this idea of the game of black and white.
The game of black and white. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about this game.
So imagine a world where everything is either black or white.
No in between.
Nope. No shades of gray, no nuances, just black and white.
It's pretty limited.
Exactly. And that's precisely Watts' point. He says that we tend to see the world in these really simplistic binary terms.
We love our labels, don't we?
We do. It's like good versus evil, self versus other, us versus them.
Light versus dark.
Right. We divide everything up into these neat little categories. But the thing is, that's not really how reality works.
So you're saying that these opposites, they aren't really separate entities, but more like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. You got it. It's like you can't have a crest of a wave without a trough, right?
Yeah.
They're inseparable. Or think about how we define a solid object.
Okay.
It needs space around it to even exist, right?
Yeah.
Space isn't just nothing. It's essential for things to have form.
So it's like the black and the white, they define each other.
They do. And this whole black and white thinking, it's a trap. It keeps us stuck in that tube mentality we were talking about earlier.
Ah, so that's how it ties back to the illusion of self.
Exactly. Our tendency to focus on just the black or the white, to see things in isolation, that's what keeps us from seeing the whole picture.
Like we're so fixated on the individual parts that we miss the whole.
Precisely. Watts has this hilarious example.
Okay, I love his example.
Yeah, me too. So he says, imagine a cat walking behind a fence, right?
Okay.
And you can only see like little bits of the cat at a time through the gaps in the fence.
Right.
So you might think, oh, the head is causing the tail to appear. But in reality, they're both just parts of the same cat.
I love that. We see things in bits and pieces and we make all these assumptions about how they're connected.
Yeah.
But really, our perspective is just way too narrow.
Exactly. And this applies to how we understand cause and effect, too. Like, we see one event followed by another and we assume, oh, this caused that.
Right.
But there's often this much bigger interconnected web of factors at play that we're totally missing.
We think we're seeing the whole board game.
Yeah.
But we're only seeing, like, a few of the pieces.
Exactly. And that brings us to, like, the heart of Watts' argument, the biggest taboo of all.
Okay, hit me with it.
The taboo is that we are, in fact, IT.
IT? Whoa, hold on. You mean like the source of everything?
Yes. The ultimate reality.
Wow.
And this is where he draws on Vedanta again. The idea that the self, this ultimate reality, is playing all the roles in the universe, like dreaming up this whole cosmos as a grand disguise.
So we're not just these separate selves, but we're also part of this larger self that's like playing hide and seek with itself.
That's the idea. He uses this cute little myth for children to explain it.
I love his stories.
Yeah, he says, God also likes to play hide and seek. But because there's nothing outside of God, he has no one but himself to play with.
So we're all just different aspects of God, like experiencing ourselves in all these different forms. That's kind of beautiful.
It is beautiful.
But also kind of terrifying. Yeah.
It's definitely challenging to like wrap your head around.
No.
And that's exactly why it's a taboo.
Right.
Our minds are so conditioned to see ourselves as these like separate little beings.
Yeah.
We're afraid of this realization because we tend to think of God as this controlling figure, not the playful, creative force that's actually running the show.
This is definitely pushing me out of my comfort zone, I have to say.
It's good to be challenged, right?
It is. It's like a whole new way of seeing the world is opening up.
That's the magic of Watts.
So if we're all part of this interconnected web of existence, what happens when we die? Does the game just end?
This is where things get even more fascinating. Watts has a very unique take on death.
Yeah, he doesn't see it as this big, scary ending, right?
Not at all. He actually calls it a golden opportunity.
A golden opportunity. For what?
For awakening. He sees death as a liberation from this ego prison we create for ourselves.
So instead of clinging to this limited sense of self, we can use death as a chance to, like, let go and merge back into this larger reality.
Exactly. Think about it. When you're facing death, all those things you normally cling to,
Like what?
your possessions, your status, even your body, they all become meaningless. It's the perfect opportunity to experience that you're not just this individual I, but something much greater.
It's like all the masks come off.
They do.
And you see the truth of what's underneath.
It reminds me of that quote from Ananda Kumaraswamy. He said, "I pray that death will not come and catch me unannihilated."
Wow.
He wanted to die having fully realized his true nature.
So it's not just about avoiding death, but about using it as a chance to wake up to who we really are.
Exactly. Gurdjieff, that eccentric spiritual teacher.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
He suggested that constantly being aware of death could help us destroy our egoism and live more authentically.
So rather than fearing death, maybe we should embrace it as like a chance to wake up.
It's not about suppressing the fear, but understanding what death truly represents. It's shedding the persona.
The mask.
Right. It's like actors congratulating each other after a performance, recognizing that the play is over.
But the actors are still there.
Exactly.
That's such a beautiful analogy.
It is.
But here's the thing.
What's that?
We don't have to wait for death to experience this kind of liberation.
Nope. we can start practicing letting go of this ego attachment right now in this moment.
So how do we do that? How do we let go of the illusion of self while we're still alive and kicking?
It's all about shifting your focus from the I to the IT.
From the individual to the whole.
Right. Remember that game of black and white we were talking about?
The trap.
Yeah. We need to stop trying to force everything into those binary categories and start seeing the interconnectedness of it all.
It's like instead of focusing on just the head or the tail of the cat, we need to see the whole cat.
You got it. It's about expanding your awareness, your perspective, to see beyond the limitations of your ego.
Okay, I'm with you so far, but how do we actually do this?
It's a practice, a continual process of unlearning and relearning.
Give me some practical tips.
One thing Watts suggests is to cultivate a new kind of awareness, one that's not limited by your narrow focus of attention.
How do you do that?
Pay attention to the things you normally ignore, the spaces between things, the silences between sounds, the moments of stillness between actions.
The off parts of the on-off game.
Exactly. It's in those spaces, those intervals, where you can glimpse the interconnectedness of everything.
So it's about noticing the things that are usually in the background.
Right. Cultivate a sense of wonder. Look at the ordinary in a new way. Appreciate the beauty and complexity of it all.
Like really being present in the moment.
Yes. And remember, life is a game. The point of the game is to enjoy the dance, the interplay of opposites.
So it's not about conquering or controlling, but about playing.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important point Watts makes, this idea that the more we try to control, the less free we actually become.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
He uses the example of technology to illustrate this paradox.
It's like we're obsessed with self-improvement, optimizing everything.
All the time.
But somewhere along the way, we've lost touch with something essential.
It's like we're constantly trying to, perfect ourselves. You know?
And control everything around us.
Our environment, our bodies, our emotions, even our thoughts.
It's exhausting.
It is. And in the process, we lose touch with our spontaneity, our creativity, our ability to just be.
So it's about finding that balance.
Between control and surrender.
Right.
Effort and ease. But how do you find that balance when you're surrounded by all these messages about, productivity and perfection?
It's like you're constantly being told you need to be doing more, achieving more, being more.
It's a dance, remember?
The dance of life.
Yeah. And like any good dance, it requires a partner. You can't control everything. You have to learn to trust the flow.
Surrender to the rhythms of the universe. Easier said than done, though, right?
It is, definitely. Yeah. But that's where our relationship with death comes in.
Death? I thought we were talking about, living a more balanced life.
We are. But remember how Watts saw death as the ultimate letting go?
Yeah.
He believed that if we could embrace death, not as this, enemy, but as a natural part of life, it would free us from so much anxiety and fear.
I get that, but it's still a bit scary, right?
Of course. It's natural to feel that way. But that fear, it often comes from our attachment to this, limited sense of self. We're afraid of losing everything we identify with.
Our stuff, our relationships, our bodies.
But if we can shift our perspective, recognize that our true self is so much bigger than that.
Then this physical form.
Then death becomes less threatening. More like a transition, a transformation.
Not an ending.
Exactly. Like Kumaraswamy's prayer.
He wanted to die unannihilated.
Right. Meaning he wanted to fully realize his true nature before death.
But we don't have to wait till we're on our deathbeds to do that, right?
Not at all. We can start living from that awareness right now. It's like approaching life with this understanding that death is just a part of the dance. It's not the end of the music.
Yeah, it kind of takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. And it frees you from that need to control everything, to cling to that limited sense of self. Allows you to just embrace the dance with more joy, more spontaneity.
This has been an incredible deep dive. Watt's ideas are so challenging, but also so liberating.
It's like he gives you a whole new way of seeing the world.
He does. So, folks, that's our deep dive into Alan Watts and the book. It's been a wild ride. Hopefully you're leaving with some new perspectives, some fresh questions, and maybe even a sense of wonder about this amazing dance of existence we're all a part of.
Absolutely. And remember, the exploration doesn't end here. Keep questioning. Keep diving deep into those mysteries of life.
Until next time, fellow deep divers, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.
And remember, you are, in fact, IT.